Richard, we still love you. Jason, come on up. Bring your friends. We're just going to zoom right through. We got a few more things to do before lunch break. And one of them is I get to introduce a forester turned lawyer turned apparently economic expert. Yes, go ahead. Panelists, you sit down. He's a really excellent guy. If you haven't met him, my pleasure now to introduce Jason Fisher, partner at MNP, to introduce our panel, Where's the Money? Financial Insights for the Natural Resources Industry. Will you give him a warm BCNRF welcome, Mr. Jason Fisher?
I feel like you need a longer walk-up after an introduction like that. Thanks, Kevin, for introducing the introducer so eloquently. I just wanted to, I feel like this is the old model cell phone that Minister Bailey was referring to this morning, but this is what happens when you're 49 years old, it's a second day of the conference, and you've lost your glasses, so you can't actually read anything on your phone anymore. Hadi, everyone. Welcome. As Kevin noted, my name is Jason Fisher, and I'm just here to introduce the great people that are sitting on the stage and one who will be appearing virtually. I am a partner at MNP, and MNP is a leading Canadian business advisory firm which provides accounting, consulting, and tax advice in all provinces and territories across Canada. And our slogan is wherever business takes you. And we are very pleased that your business has brought you to Prince George, that has brought you to the traditional territory of the Lheidli-T'enneh, that has brought you to the 21st Annual Natural Resources Forum, and to this panel, Where is the Money? Financial Insights for the Natural Resource Industry. I think we've been hearing for the last couple of days about the exciting advancements in the BC natural resource sector and the bright future ahead of us. This panel will discuss the opportunities to finance this bright future in an often uncertain present. Our four panelists today are the Honourable James Moore, who's a Senior Business Advisor with Dentons Canada, LLP. James has the distinction of having been the third youngest cabinet minister in Canadian history, but he is now the oldest person on this panel, and he's going to be appearing virtually in a video, so he won't hear me say that about him, which is great. Also on the panel, if I can get to the rest of my notes here, Kendra Johnston, who's Managing Director at Peartree, Canada. She has over 20 years of mineral exploration and mining experience, which means that she started in the mines when she was 12 years old, and we'll be speaking about the role private equity plays in the natural resource development in the mining sector. Kimberly Burns is joining us as well from Dentons Canada LLP. She's a partner there, and she will share her insights from her experience advising clients in the mining and renewable energy sectors on all aspects of major projects and transactions, and so looking more globally at private equity. And MNP's own Jamil Sayani, who's the Regional Managing Partner for Northern BC and BC Indigenous Services for MNP, is joining the panel as well. He will be speaking from his experience as a trusted advisor to First Nations involved in major resource development projects across British Columbia and Canada. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to these folks to self-moderate, and we're looking forward to a very interesting discussion, but I believe that we're starting with the video from James.
Hi, it's James Moore here. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you up in Prince George. I got caught in the snow and ice storm down here in Port Moody, and so I wasn't able to make it up there. But I just want to say to the organizers, to the sponsors, and to everybody who has made the BC Natural Resources Forum such a phenomenal success, I just want to thank you for your advocacy and hard work. You know, for over 20 years now, this forum has been a gathering place for people who believe in the resources sector and what it means to British Columbia and Canada today, what it's meant in the past, and what it will mean in the future, and has the potential to mean in the future if we get things right in terms of public policy, investment climate, and we work together to build the right partnerships of investment opportunity, Indigenous reconciliation, and responsible environmental stewardship, and taking advantage of economic opportunities both at home and indeed around the world. And you know, we used to say when I was in public life that, you know, right at that point when your message is starting to get really exhausting to say, and you're tired of hearing your own voice, and you're tired of advocating for something, that's really the point at which your message is just starting to have purchase with the audience that you're trying to connect with. And so those of us who believe in the resources sector, which is everybody in the room and everybody who's attending this forum, you know, we should never tire about telling the incredible story of the resources sector and what it means to the Canadian economy. It represents 1.7 million jobs across the country. The resources sector in Canada is responsible for $80 to $90 billion in capital expenditures every year, which is 30% of non-residential capital investment in Canada. Resource exports from Canada represent 51% of Canada's total merchandise exports, sitting at over $320 billion in value last year. In 2016, we exported $201 billion in resource exports. In 2022, it was $320 billion in value. And in British Columbia, the resources sector makes up about half of British Columbia's economic base. And natural resources and gateway services, which are the marine ports, the airports, our resource transportation infrastructure, all of it combined makes up to 2/3 of BC's economic base. And we have an opportunity to produce these resources in ways that are environmentally and technologically responsible, green, with full Indigenous partnerships. And it was, it was a great moment for Canada and for British Columbia in November when Prime Minister Trudeau was hosting Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and the Prime Minister of Japan referenced LNG Canada by name as a flagship project for Japan's energy security and decarbonization as they try to displace coal and their ongoing dependence on Russia. And there are estimates that the LNG market is going to grow by 90% between 2024 and 2040, and 75% of that growth demand is going to be in Asia. And there's no one that is better placed than Canada to service that market opportunity. And we need these export markets and these resource opportunities to grow because Canada's economy is flat. And in fact, Canada's economy is effectively in a recession. Government forecasts do not expect a recovery in living standards in Canada or in British Columbia until at least 2027. This graph here shows that on an annual real GDP per capita basis, which is real dollars on a per capita basis, in British Columbia and across the country, that Canada and BC will not recover the rate of per capita GDP to 2019 levels until at least 2027. Now, in British Columbia, it's estimated that we may have recovered our pre-pandemic level of GDP per capita in 2022, but in BC, our real GDP per capita is expected to fall by 4.2% over 23 and 2024. So this translates into an average real income loss for British Columbians of $2,200 per person, $5,400 on a per household basis over the coming 2 years. Now, by 2027, our real GDP per capita is expected to be near 2019 levels, but we're going to need all of that because job growth in Canada is stalled. In December, Stats Canada reported that the economy added a total of 100 jobs in the final month of 2023. The full number of full-time jobs fell by 23,500 in December, and we gained 23,000 part-time jobs. The overall economy has been struggling to grow, and the softness that we've seen in the economy is now starting to catch up in the job market as well. And the Canadian economy shrank in the third quarter of 2023. And we also have seen, as the report showed earlier this week from the Bank of Canada, that interest rates, the inflation rate is now ticking back up, and which means that the Bank of Canada's move to lower interest rates is probably going to be pushed off later into the spring and maybe back into the middle of the year, which means that the recovery of the economy and the cost of living crisis and the housing crisis and mortgage renewals and that knock-on effect is not going to be seen for further down the road. So that means that the resource sector is going to have to be stood up. It's going to have to be bolstered. We're going to have to get this right, and we're going to have to work together. And I think there's a phenomenal opportunity that's in front of us. Throughout this year, 2024, in British Columbia, we have a provincial election campaign. We've got a provincial budget before that. We've got people who are running to be MLAs all across the province of British Columbia. We have people who are aspiring to be premier. On the federal side, there's probably going to be a federal election not until 2025, but the leaders are coming across British Columbia, going across the country. We've got nomination races that are happening. And I think that for the resources sector, for us to work together and to point out and to be advocates consistently about and to point out the direction that we need to go for Indigenous reconciliation, for environmental stewardship, for taking advantage of market opportunity, for developing our resources effectively, that we should start setting markers and engaging with people who want to be our public policy leaders and who want to be Premier and Prime Minister and MLA and MP and ministers, and start making real demands and start making people make real commitments to the resources sector across the province about how we're going to get this right and how we're going to move forward effectively. And I can think of no better audience than this audience and everybody who's been at this forum to sort of pick up that torch and to pick up that mandate and put that mandate on yourself to be advocates for the resources sector and to learn and to work with people in the room and to learn the best ways to engage in government and to engage with those who aspire to be our political leaders, that they need to get it right. They need to get our public policy mix correct as we move forward, so we can take advantage of these global opportunities, so we can take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us to build better prosperity as we move forward into difficult economic times through the rest of this year. But we're going to need the resources sector to do its job. Now I'm going to turn the microphone over to my colleagues who are there on the stage, Kimberly and Kendra, to continue the conversation in their areas of expertise in resource development and drawing in capital. But thank you very much for the opportunity to send this short video message, and I hope you all have a fantastic day up there in Prince George.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to start, of course, by thanking James for pulling that video together last night so that he could still be part of this presentation, but he certainly sends his apologies in being snowed in and not being able to make it here today. But we would also like to extend a great big thank you to Jamil here, who graciously jumped in, willing to help out and add to our discussion this afternoon. So we're going to self-moderate this panel, which always makes it a lot of fun. So Kimberly, let's start with you. Where exactly is the money right now?
Am I on? Yes, great. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip right over where the money is not, and that is in the traditional retail and capital markets. I have yet to find anyone that can look me in the eye and chooses to say, yes, 2024 is the year that retail investors are coming back to the resource industry. So unless you are large oil and gas, let's set that aside. We see money available in private equity. And by private equity, I mean everything from a local family business that's looking to invest their generational wealth to the largest global private equity funds that are using Canadian resources as part of their portfolios. And I'm also looking at sort of three different transaction types. So there's the straight out acquisition, where private equity is coming in, taking your business, earning you out, and you're done and dusted in 2 years. The next is a more traditional private equity style. There's an investment for growth, a little bit of a partnership, a seat at the table, a seat on the board, maybe some veto power on major decisions, and private equity might offer you some finance or executive management help. The third model, and it's also available out there right now for resource businesses in Canada, looks a bit more like a traditional bank. It's a passive investment, so an equity investment where they're looking for a revenue stream from your business. Now, if you are a revenue positive business in the resources sector in Canada, private equity across North America is looking at you. They're analyzing you and they're thinking about you. And if you haven't had the call or the reach out, it's on its way. So you could be prepared. It's always nice to be asked to dance, isn't it? Whether you want that reach out or not. And you can go on the internet or you can talk to your advisors for the businesses in the room. There are a laundry list of legal and financial things you can do to prepare for this. I have one thing I wanted to share at this conference, I had three things, but today we're only going to make it through one, and that is if you want to have a successful transaction with private equity this year or in the near future and you're in resources, it's great that you have balance sheets and multiples, but what you really need to distinguish yourself to be the partner that they're looking for right now is something that's been talked about. It's true in private equity. You need strong, positive relationships with Indigenous groups. You need strong, positive engagement, and you need ideally strong positive endorsement from the Indigenous groups and the nations that are in your community. And that is what is going to get you from the reach out from private equity to closing your deal, should you want to do one. It's the easy standout right now, and it's what these businesses are looking for. It's not just valuable anymore to have a good reputation. You need to show your collaboration and what everyone at this conference has been talking about. So also true on where's the money. Jamil, you do a lot of work with equity participation for First Nations. Can you comment on that?
Sure, definitely, and hopefully you can hear this. But and I'm obviously not James as mentioned, so and probably not as eloquent. But I'll tell you what I tell my kids, which is you get what you get and don't get upset. But on the Indigenous side, for sure, we've seen. Like, there's been a number of natural resource companies or major projects, obviously, that have in the past gone through consultation processes, all those pieces, and usually that's resulted in a type of impact benefit agreement or something of the sort that would provide a royalty payment, maybe some employment that might get filled, might not get filled, and a bunch of pieces that would be within those agreements. And so what we've seen a shift in over the last little while is really is First Nations taking an active ownership participation and equity stake in major projects. Started mostly in the oil and gas industry, but we're starting to see that move around into other industries now. And really I think it aligns interests from the First Nations and industry partners around the profitability of a project, the impacts of that, how the projects are governed, and a bunch of those pieces. So what we've seen, and mainly it's been in Alberta to date, and now it's kind of starting to move into BC. But in Alberta, they have something called the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, where First Nations can go raise capital with a loan guarantee, and that's made things have accelerated quite significantly in that space. So we're hoping for the same kind of thing to happen in BC eventually, and we'll see where that goes. But maybe I'll hand it over to you, Kendra, and I know you have obviously a lot of experience on the mining side of things, and what are you seeing there?
Absolutely. So we've spent quite a bit of time at this conference talking about some of the major projects in the space and across all resources, but I'm going to zoom right down into the junior exploration and development space here in BC, but right across the province, or right across the country, sorry, and talk a little bit about that space. And so if we go back 10, 15 years, we used to see a lot of money coming from the retail sector, and to Kimberly's point, that money is not there anymore. It dried up, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago at this point. And at that time, we saw a real transition into traditional flow-through funds, and flow-through is one of the things that has been an incredible success from a fiscal policy perspective, both federally and provincially, and many of the provinces across the country, but here specifically in British Columbia. And so I think that's a really important piece for the mining industry to realize and to understand, and for others in the room to look at and consider. It's been a fantastic model. But the money has moved now from traditional flow-through dollars into charity flow-through dollars. And if we look at how much money is raised on the Canadian stock exchanges in any given year, we're sitting right now, this year, numbers look about the same this year as last year, but we're sitting at about $1.3 billion for junior exploration and development companies. Approximately 83% of that is raised through the flow-through regime, and approximately 98% of that 83 is raised through charity flow-through platforms these days. So it really is an incredible mechanism to promote the industry, to talk about the industry, but it also is bringing in a lot of foreign direct investment, which we were really happy to hear the ministers touch on this morning. So a lot of global dollars being brought in, and we've seen some great success stories, certainly in the mining industry, with dollars coming in from Australia over the last a number of years here. So some really great success stories. So Kimberly, maybe I'll pass it back to you to continue the global story of what that impact is having here at home.
Thank you. I do have one comment that I haven't heard at this forum yet, and with respect to global money. So 10, 20 years ago, the regulatory environment for global investment into Canada was, from my point of view, a diligence box check and afterthought. You could tell a story and you would be having a net benefit to Canada, and you'd be sort of over or under a cap, and there wasn't a big regulatory hurdle unless you were a rocket science company. In the last 5 years, the geopolitical environment and the world is changing. And so if you're looking at money coming into Canada from global sources, you need to move the thinking and the planning with respect to regulatory on that from the back of your process to the very front. You need to start talking to your advisors early about how the money can come into Canada and how it's going to work for this industry and for the current climate and what might come in the future for just global flow of investment dollars. But we've gone from a box check to a gating item, and we need to raise that awareness in addition to making resources in Canada look attractive. They look great. We look great. We're stable. We're wonderful. But we need to start the regulatory thinking earlier on in the process to get it done a bit faster. Jamil, you were talking about equity participation, and I think you sort of touched on changes you'd like to see, but do you have further comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the changes that we'd like to see, obviously, is the loan guarantee program expanding just outside of Alberta, in BC, nationally, and I know those conversations are currently underway. But that obviously accelerates the ability of First Nations to be able to acquire capital for these equity stakes in projects. The other few things I'd say as well is as this starts maturing a bit more and these types of transactions happen more frequently, I think it's just an understanding from industry of just when you're approaching some of these projects is what is the intent of it? Like, a lot of it says, okay, well, this is part of our reconciliation action plan. That in and of itself is probably not the only reason that that this is happening. So I think it's just being honest about here's the business reasons as well, because I think obviously there's a history with Indigenous communities of there's a reconciliation piece, but there's also a lot of history there, and understanding and being open and transparent about why a transaction is occurring would be super helpful as well. So maybe I'll, in the interest of time, pass that off. But Kendra, I guess on the mining side, like, is there certain incentives or things that are driving capital into that market?
Sure, and maybe I'll just look to you both. Do you mind if I take the final? No? Okay, great. We're just running tight on time up here. So the last piece I really wanted to touch on was the impact of the critical mineral strategy and tax credit that the federal government announced almost 2 years ago now. It was April 2022. And again, the resounding success that program has had in the first 18 months, so from the time it was announced in April 2022 through to the end of 2023, there was over $500 million raised for critical minerals projects across the country. But I think there's a really important policy piece here that many in the room who are involved in mineral exploration and mining probably aren't aware of, and that's proposed changes to the legislation on the alternative minimum tax that's coming in from Finance Canada. And really what that's going to do is going to impact the very few, actually, people who are raising funds for critical minerals in Canada. In fact, it is 1,200 people who raised that $500 million, which is incredible when we think about it. But all of those people are going to be impacted by the alternative minimum tax going forward. And so there are a few little changes. I don't think it was intentional to have it impact the critical minerals tax credit in the way that it's going to. But at the end of the day, the ultimate impact that it's going to be is a reduction of about 30% of investment coming into critical minerals through that critical minerals tax credit. So that $500 million that was raised, had the new proposed rules been in place going forward, would have resulted over the last couple of years to be about $333 million instead of the 500. So quite a significant impact, and I think it's something that we all need to be aware of and keep a close eye on going forward. So I think that's, it has been a resounding success as a program, and we'd certainly like to see it continue that way. So I think we will leave it there unless either of you have last minute comments, but certainly there is money out there, and we look forward to seeing it come into the natural resources and support this industry and the public policy that we have that is a fantastic place here, not only in British Columbia, but across the country. Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
fantastic panel. And to thank our panel today, I'll ask you to relax there. We're going to have the team photo afterwards. But please welcome to the stage Larry Villeneuve, National Director, Indigenous Affairs, Labor's International Union of North America. Larry, welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I'd certainly firstly like to acknowledge Tene First Nation traditional territory, Chief Nolan Logan as well. My name is Larry Villeneuve. I'm National Director for LIUNA's Indigenous Affairs Department in Canada. I'm here on behalf of the 150,000 men and women who work across Canada with LIUNA. We are the Labor's International Union of North America. We're excited to be a platinum sponsor of this conference once again this year in support of the efforts of our industry and community alliance to ensure BC's future in responsible resource development. LIUNA works collaboratively with Indigenous communities, government, industry stakeholders, and energy leaders to build, service, and maintain some of the largest projects in North America. These projects provide our members with economic stability and lucrative career opportunities. We are proud to be a sponsor of this event and the opportunity to showcase our members' work. And we'd like to thank the Honourable James Moore, Senior Business Advisor at Dentons Canada LLP, Kendra Johnston, Managing Director at Peartree Canada, and Kimberly Burns, Lawyer and Partner at Dentons Canada LLP, as well as Jamil Sehan, I hope I said that right, Jamil, close enough, I guess, and for their input, of course, in today's session, and thank you for all of that. LIUNA is your energy workforce solution. We look forward to continuing to building partnerships, and thank you. I look forward to seeing you all again next year and wish you all safe travels. Hi.
And then